Have you ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why did I say all of that? Maybe you felt exposed, vulnerable, or even ashamed. For autistic people like me, that feeling isn't rare. It's a constant echo in the back of our minds that we're often told we overshare, that we say too much, that we cross lines without even knowing that the lines were even there. But what if I tried to reframe this and said that it's not always a bad thing, that a tendency to share deeply and openly might get us misunderstood, but it's actually a sign of trust and connection when you do find the right people to listen. It might not actually be oversharing, but just being honest. For me, I've struggled with this for a long time. From as early as I can remember, I've always been an open book. I would tell people what I was thinking, what was going on at home, personal stuff that maybe other kids would keep private. Not because I wanted attention, but I wanted people to feel sorry for me, because it was just how I communicated, honestly, directly, and without filters. But this meant giving unfiltered details of trauma, abuse, and even mentally ill thoughts to people that I couldn't trust. I didn't know I was autistic when I was a kid, so I didn't understand why everyone was looking at me like I had two heads, or that I had always said something wrong or amusing. I didn't understand that others had unspoken social rules. I just thought everyone was being fake while I was being honest. Honestly, that still feels true sometimes. In school, I'd tell classmates things that were deeply personal, things that happened in my family that were always traumatic, or how anxious and depressed I was feeling, how much I loved Harry Potter even when I was in high school and it wasn't cool anymore. I thought that talking about personal experiences, I was creating a connection with people, that I was opening up and making friends. But what often happened instead was those people used it against me. People I trusted used me as entertainment, asking me to sit with them in class, then letting me talk or lesson, pretending to be interested so they could go and laugh at it behind my back later. Their whole attitude toward me would change if they were not in the mood, or were having a bad day, or just didn't fancy a laugh, because I was not actually their friend, I was their entertainment. I couldn't figure out what I'd done wrong. That pattern didn't just stay with me in school, it followed me into adulthood. In conversations with new friends, co-workers, even acquaintances, I'd find myself sharing something deeply personal, a struggle I was going through, a trauma I'd survived, something that most people would consider too much for casual conversation. But to me, it wasn't shocking, it wasn't attention seeking, it was just my life, just something that I'd been through and I'd talked about, in the same way that someone might say I went to the shop, just factual and honest, without drama. But people didn't always respond that way. Sometimes they looked uncomfortable, sometimes they changed the subject, sometimes they distanced themselves altogether, and once again I'd walk away thinking, what did I do wrong? People have assumed I overshare because I want sympathy, or I'm trying to make everything about me. But that's never been the intention, and I'm not trying to hijack the conversation. I'm trying to relate, to connect. If someone shares a tough experience I've been through similar, I might share mine as a way of saying you're not on your own, but it doesn't always come across that way, especially to people who aren't used to that level of openness. On a positive side though, as I have got older, I've managed to find people I work with or friends who I've made who are fully understanding and accept me for who I am. They know how I communicate and they don't really care, they just treat me like anyone else. But there's always a doubt in my mind that maybe I'm just reading it wrong and actually everyone's still laughing at me behind my back. So why does this happen? Why do autistic people so often get labelled as oversharers? One of the big reasons is that many of us struggle with something called social reciprocity. I always say that wrong. The unspoken rule of when to talk, how much to say, and how to tell someone's uncomfortable. We might miss facial expressions, tones, shifts, or body language, or we might just misread it altogether. That tells neurotypical people, hey, maybe don't go there, or we just don't understand that because I don't mind sharing something does not mean everyone wants to hear about it. We also tend to be very literal and direct. If someone asks how I'm doing, I assume that they actually want to know. I don't assume it's just a polite formality, so I'll tell them honestly. If I've had a hard day, I'll say that. If I'm dealing with grief or anxiety, I might share that too. Not to be dramatic, but because I think honesty is better than pretending. And if you ask someone a question, surely you want to know the answer. Another reason is that many autistic people crave real connection. Surface level small talk doesn't come naturally to us. It feels exhausting, confusing, and sometimes pointless. So when I share something personal, it's not because I want the spotlight, it's because that's how I bond. That's how I say, this is me, the real me, can you meet me here? But unfortunately, the world isn't always ready for that. We live in a society that rewards masks, emotional ones, social ones. People are more comfortable with curated versions of reality, and when someone comes in with raw truth or no filter, it can feel threatening or awkward or too much, or even embarrassing to the person listening. The results: shame, isolation, overthinking, and taboo topics. I can't count the number of times I've walked away from a conversation and replayed it in my mind for hours, even days, analysing every sentence, every reaction, every possible mistake. Did I say too much? Did I make them uncomfortable? Do they think I'm weird? Are they talking about me behind my back? It's exhausting, and it can lead to feeling like your voice is dangerous, like being open is wrong, or being yourself pushes people away. And when that happens often enough, you start to withdraw. You stop talking, you keep things inside, you hide. And I've definitely been there more than once. But there's a truth that I'm learning. Openness is not a flaw. I think it's a trait that comes with challenges, yes, definitely, but also beauty, because here's what people don't always see. When you're someone who shares deeply, you also listen deeply. You're someone who speaks the truth. You create a space for others to do the same. And when you're honest about what you've been through, you remind people they're not alone, which was the whole reason why I started this channel in the first place. Sure, I still have to work on boundaries. I'm learning to check in with myself. Is this the right time to share? Is this person someone I trust? Do they have the capacity to hold this story right now? And if not, that's okay too. I'm learning that not everyone needs access to every part of me, but I'm also letting go of the shame. I'm allowed to communicate differently. I'm allowed to take up space. I'm allowed to be real. If you're autistic, or even if you're not, and you've been told you overshare, I want you to know that you're not alone. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're just human with a different way of processing connection and relating to the world. Let's change the way we think about oversharing, and instead of judging it, let's look at it as it really is, a form of honesty, a way to connect, a way to say, I trust you with this part of me. Of course, boundaries matter, and we can still grow in learning when and how and with whom to share our deeper stories, but we can do that without losing our authenticity, and we can learn boundaries without building walls. So if you're someone being made to feel ashamed of your voice, this is your reminder that your voice matters, your stories matter, and the way you express yourself is valid, even if it looks different from what society expects. If this video has resonated with you, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Do you struggle with oversharing? Have you had moments where your honesty has been misunderstood or used against you? Let's talk about it, let's support each other, and make this space where being real is celebrated, not silenced. As I always say, please make sure that we stay positive in the comments. We can debate, but I want it to be a safe space for everybody. That is everything for now. I hope you're okay. Thanks for listening. Bye.